Hey everybody, at long last we come to the moment everyone has been waiting for, the introduction of the most important character in all of Star Wars, the hero of the hour, Jar Jar Binks. But seriously, I'm going to be changing up my style a bit for this video and trying something new, so let me know what you think in the comments. We'll explore Jar Jar thoroughly through his appearances, but know that not everything will be covered here. I'm just going to keep going scene by scene. I'm considering branching out into some broad topic overview videos as well, starting with a more free-form series, focusing on specific ideas rather than scenes. So let me know what you think about that idea too, if you have any topic recommendations or how you feel about this new video format. Now without further ado, the analysis. The Trade Federation's first act on Naboo is to destroy all the beautiful nature, running over trees and chasing animals. Again, people could chalk this up to bad military strategy for invading the uninhabited forest rather than, actually invading cities, but I think it goes deeper than that. As I've said in a previous video, the Trade Federation isn't on Naboo just to take over. They're on the planet to dominate, and that means they're going to try to destroy the planet itself, including the animals and plants. Basically just to show their power. It also shows their total disregard for nature, which has a lot of impacts that aren't very subtle. It's a commentary on war and corporations destroying the environment unnecessarily, and it also ties back to our opening shot of Naboo's surface to draw that stark comparison between the two sides. The Naboo government lives in a lush garden and the Trade Federation just destroys the planet's forests, with the underlying implication that the drab, artless, lifeless interior of their capital ships is much more their style. This is followed up by Qui-Gon running away from them with the animals, drawing a nice parallel between the Jedi and nature itself. I really like this scene and I think that's a pretty good visual shot. It's also a good way of showing another Trade Federation threat to the Jedi. If Qui-Gon has to run away from these transports, it means he's vulnerable to them and we need to worry. Despite the chance of audiences being annoyed by Jar Jar, it's clear that he's a defenseless creature needing help here. Qui-Gon risking his life to save the Gungan helps further endear us to Qui-Gon, even if it gives a poor first impression of Jar Jar. Jar Jar standing there screaming rather than running is a pretty typical response to danger, as nonsensical as it may seem at first. Sentient creatures have the 4F defenses: fight, flight, fawn, and freeze, but we don't necessarily always use the correct one. In overwhelming circumstances, such as giant tanks from outer space suddenly senselessly destroying your home and barreling towards you, it's perfectly natural to react with the wrong defense mechanism. Here, Jar Jar uses freeze, something that comes up pretty frequently throughout his appearances in the story. A lot of people see this as Jar Jar just being too dumb to take action in the dangerous situation, but this channel's called Deep Dive after all, so it's our job to look into this way too much. Brace with me as we spend an inordinate amount of time to explore some Gungan psychology. Sentient beings have the 4F defenses, each with their own purpose for responding to different kinds of danger. A well-developed individual at their peak has perfect access to all 4 of these functions, and knows which one to use for each situation. These are the people we admire, the reliable ones, the people we aspire to be, the paragons like Qui-Gon Jinn. Qui-Gon can fight when there's a confrontation, fly when he's outmatched, fawn to keep the peace, and freeze when it's best to wait out a situation. These skills are developed through childhood experience, and then hopefully perfected throughout adulthood. Qui-Gon was raised by the Jedi with a lot of training on how and when to perform these defensive skills. Jar Jar, of course, had none of that. Jar Jar is an example of what happens when people are raised in a skewed environment, one that provides excess reward for some defense mechanisms while actively punishing others. Based on Jar Jar's response here, we can assume that for whatever reason he has an underdeveloped flight skill, and compensates for that using freeze. Furthermore, we all know that Jar Jar is not exactly an assertive individual, meaning that he has some underdeveloped fight skills, both physically and psychologically. And then in the scene right after this, we're shown that he compensates for that using some overdeveloped fawning.
Oh, muy, muy, I love you.
You almost got us killed. Are you brainless?
I spec The ability to speak does not make you intelligent. Now get out of here.
No, Missa, stay. Missa called Jar Jar Binks. Missa, your humble servant.
That won't be necessary.
Oh, but it is. 'Tis demanded by the gods, it is.
Let's take a moment of silence to appreciate that incredible quote.
The ability to speak does not make you intelligent.
It rings even more true today than when the movie first came out. Anyway, Qui-Gon saved Jar Jar's life out of a general kindness to all creatures, but he knows how to set boundaries, and he doesn't want Jar Jar with him. But still, every time Qui-Gon insults him or tells him to go away, Jar Jar just doubles down with his fawning.
Now get out of here.
No, Missa, stay. Missa called Jar Jar Binks. Missa, your humble servant.
That won't be necessary.
Taken together, we get a breakdown of Jar Jar's psychology, revealing his backstory. And no, I don't mean Darth Jar Jar, but I can address that in a freeform video. If anyone's interested, comment below. Having weakened fight and flight responses is an indication that these defense mechanisms were punished during early childhood development. It's likely that any time Jar Jar tried to stand up for himself, he was punished. And any time he tried to avoid confrontation, he was also punished.
How rude.
This left young Jar Jar with only two defense mechanisms left: beg for mercy, fawning,
Hey, yo, Delia, Captain Topos. Missa back.
or just accept the pain, freeze. People in this situation have a natural arcing goal set out for them. Learn to reduce the unhealthy defenses and practice replacing them with the underdeveloped ones. If Jar Jar was the hero of Star Wars, this could have been his heroic journey, and it would honestly have been very interesting to watch. But Jar Jar's not the hero of the story. Through the course of the prequels, Jar Jar never really grows too much. He always fawns.
Army! It's so smiling to see in your son.
He often freezes. And he becomes a cautionary tale of how our own childhood insecurities can negatively impact society if we never take the necessary steps to overcome them.
Missa proposed that the Senate give immediately emergency powers to the Supreme Chancellor.
Jar Jar's not meant to be the hero, and he is on some level meant to be annoying, but also pitiful and relatable. In Jar Jar we see the flaws of humanity, the weakness we always strive to overcome, and the dangers our ignorance poses to ourselves and others. Let's face it, in the real world, most people aren't Qui-Gon Jinn. Most of us are more like a Jar Jar. We all have our own insecurities, our own fears, and our own flaws that cause trouble and make others not like us from time to time. Our role then, as viewers, is to cheer for Jar Jar's persistence, empathize with his shortcomings, learn from his mistakes, and work on ourselves in our own lives to go from clumsy Gungan to Bombad Jedi. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this deep dive interesting. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and leave a comment below with your thoughts on today's topic. And as always, think critically, be creative, and have a great day.